Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and this video is meant to be a video response to the always awesome Night of the Creepy Monster Squad Tina, wife to Joe, my good buddy, TJ Pyramid, who posted a video talking about the comparisons, between modern horror versus classic, essentially, kind of discussing which you prefer and which you think is better and stuff like that. And she was basically asking for other people's opinions, and I thought I'd comment because I've long time been of the opinion that classic horror is more where it's at. One thing I have to sort of mirror in, a point she made is modern horror to me seems very derivative. It seems very almost, ADHD sort of paced and stuff like that. And usually it's featuring young teenage characters and, showing nudity and stuff like that. There's more emphasis on gore, and that's not necessarily a derogatory thing, a bad thing, but it just seems like they're processing these kind of movies almost like on a conveyor belt, a machine conveyor belt, like not so much creativity and thought as there were in the old days seems to be getting put behind these stories and stuff like that, if there is even a story. There are exceptions to the rule, of course, in modern horror, but what you get with classic movies is a lot more creativity, I think, and a lot more atmosphere and ambiance, whether they're black and white movies. They don't all have to be black and white, but especially the black and white sort of, when you look at the universal horror classics like Dracula and Frankenstein, there is a pacing and an ambiance and just a character the overall film itself has, not least of which pointing to the characters in the film, the actors portraying the characters, but the film itself has a level of character. And same with Dracula. Bela Lugosi is, of course, the end-all, be-all of, Draculaean sort of vampires on film, whatever, what have you. But I think that film, again, it has its own ambiance and character, and that's something I find modern sort of horror movies just lack. I don't know whether it's because they're so fast-paced or they're into more of a shock horror value than actually kind of psychological thriller. Look at Psycho for a psychological thriller. Yes, there was a shock in that movie, but it comes at the very end with a certain reveal that I won't spoil for you here if you haven't seen Psycho. A lot of these modern movies are really about the shock value. They have something jumping out at you, whether it's the villain or the killer, the psycho killer, or just a false scare, to mess with you and that kind of thing. And there are other modern horror movies that really try to gross you out with the gore or horrific imagery. And it's like a lot of these classic movies, they left you feeling scared on a much more internal level. Maybe, calling back to an almost primal thing. I've mentioned this before with George Romero's Night of the Living Dead. That was a classic movie that, when I'm out alone at night walking around in the dark, you're afraid of somebody coming up behind you and grabbing you, It's playing on those kinds of things, very much fears we can all relate to. So I think they speak longer in the annals of time than having to just be remade and remade and remade like a lot of horrors are today, where you could take the name off of it and sit 6 movies together and people would be like, are they all part of the same series? Are they all the same movie? There isn't as much creativity and direction in the story and emphasis on the story and the atmosphere and the ambiance, all those things that make classic horror, I think, well worth the watch more so than modern. That isn't to disparage the modern at all. There are still movies that come along in the modern sense that are well worth the watch. But for me personally, it's always going to be the classic first, above all. And so I wanted to share that with you guys. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below what you think. Classic versus modern horror, which is your taste, if horror at all is your taste. And otherwise, that'll be it for me. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you later. Peace.